Now, I don't know if I'm unusual or if lots of you out there do this, but in between projects, I quite often like to have a good tidy up of my hobby space to kind of reset myself before going on to the next one. Now, this got out of hand the other night, as you can see here. This is a video halfway between what was supposed to be a quick 5-minute tidying session. It ended up being a couple of hours. I went through all my boxes, I went through the Ottoman thing there where my sprays are kept. I even dug out my old projects and started tidying up my actual display cabinets. And it really started because I was looking for this. Now, these are 2 sticks of a moulding material. This in particular is called Oyamaru, which I think is how it started over in Japan. There are other brand names for it, and this particularly I like to use Blue Stuff, which is the brand name that Green Stuff World use, which is what I'm unpacking here. Now, I was looking for some sticks of this, and I honestly thought I had more left because I've got a new model that's come into the collection, and I wanted to take some castings from it for a future project that I've got in mind. Now, all this box is here, those castings, hopefully you've watched the channel for quite a while and you know I do a lot of this. This little box here is casting from my Reaver Titan that you may have seen on the channel that I bought the other month. And these boxes really are various castings I've taken over the years from a number of different models. Now, I'm really hunting through because I needed to find some more either Oyamaru or Blue Stuff that I could melt down and reuse, because this is a reusable moulding material. Didn't have any new stuff, as you've seen knocking around, and rather than ordering it, I thought I'd use the old stuff. You can see here digging out bits that I cast up from the recent Warhound Titan. I found lots of other things. Before I started reusing it though, clean it up, use a knife here to scrape off any big parts of milliput or green stuff that are stuck to it, give it a scrub with a toothbrush and some boiling water. Now, this is the project that I want to cast up and do some bits on. You'll have probably seen from the thumbnail anyway. I picked up a Warhound Titan offline, it's second hand, some bloke was selling it for a really good price, and I wanted to capitalise on that before I start to assemble it. Now, it's not going to be assembled on a channel anytime soon, but I'm going to start doing things kind of in the background. I've done a Warhound Titan before, but when I did it, I basically sealed it shut before taking any castings. You'll have seen I did exactly the same thing on my Reaver Titan. I took a couple of mouldings, but not a lot, and then sealed it shut. I don't want them to be openable. Maybe that's my sort of lacking. I should maybe keep them open, but I like to seal them shut for gaming purposes. And there's some beautiful bits on here. In particular, what I didn't want to lose was those demonic faces and that really cool kind of chaosified Aquila that's on the back of there. Now, before I start the actual casting process, you've got to melt down this reusable compound. So this is just a sort of thermos flask for soup full of boiling water. You put it in there for 2 to 3 minutes and you can take it out. Straight into dropping some single push castings onto this central area. So I'm not doing massive casts. Some of them are going to be larger than others, you'll see as we go through. And really I'm just doing some very, very simple sort of push moulds. If you want more detail in how to do these kind of things, I'll link down below a video I've done a couple of years ago now actually, of kind of how to use Blue Stuff to cast up models. And you can do 2-part castings where you do 2 sides of a mould and it does multiple things, or you can do single push moulds like I'm doing here. So I'll drop that down below. Now, when I'm doing these push moulds, just try to be careful to get the air and stuff out, but you will see I'm using a big chunk of this material in some cases, and I'll probably make a couple of mistakes. So why am I casting these bits up? It's all well and good, me kind of saying I didn't want to lose the opportunity of other parts. What are my plans? Couple of things in mind. I've just come off the back of doing a lot of Necromunda, as you'll have probably seen, hopefully, if you watch the channel, and I've got some ideas for some really interesting chaosified Necromunda scenery. The other thing I've got an idea of, and in particular for this chaos symbol on here, you'll know if you watch the channel, I've done Warhound Titans before, I've done a couple of Reaver Titans on the channel, never ventured into the larger Titans. I'm at Warhound World again in January, and the last couple of years I've kind of kept my eye out to try and get hold of a Nemesis Warbringer. They've either been out of stock or the heads haven't been in or whatever. I'm reliably informed that they're getting better at keeping stock in at Warhound World. I'm kind of thinking of picking up one of those bigger Titans when I'm in Warhound World in January, and I want these parts to be able to chaosify that model. Now, I've done the moulds. This is where I've sort of learned, and I maybe made a couple of mistakes, because getting some of these moulds off these parts was really difficult. They're obviously quite intricate parts. They're quite solid parts, so probably no danger of breaking the actual resin, but I probably put a bit too much of the moulding material on there, so in real thick layers it was a bit of a challenge to prise it off the model. Now, I could redo the moulds, I can melt them back down again, but as you'll see, I do get a good effect out of them. But if you're doing sort of kind of moulding yourself, just think about the depth and the thickness of the mould you actually use. So what have I cast up? Well, not cast yet, I've taken the moulds, but I've gone for all the exciting bits. So the actual people that are kind of been fused into the chaosified areas in the actual Titans themselves. I've gone for some of the mechanical areas where you can see the sort of mutations taking over, and that's really going to help me hopefully do some interesting scenery. Now, this part here was an absolute nightmare to get out. I used a massive plug over every single part of the cockpit. I really should have kept it thinner. Now, I did think about just dropping this whole thing back into some boiling water, softening the material up and just peeling it out again. I ended up not doing that, and I ended up just sort of taking a lot of time to sort of get it out of the mould, but you could do that if you think you're at risk of breaking the pieces. Now, filling the mould up, I'm going to use two different materials. So these are both two-part kind of epoxy putty type things. One is green stuff, I'm sure you all know about that. That's the one I'm slicing now. And the second one I'm slicing up here is called milliput. Now, the two different materials have two very different kind of ways of working and how they do. So the milliput I'm slicing up now, it's an awful lot cheaper than green stuff, but when it sets quite brittle, so it can sort of snap and break. It's easier to mix together though, and probably a quicker one to use, and I use a lot more milliput in my hobby materials than I do green stuff. Cheaper and easier to work with, I think. The green stuff, a lot more expensive, more difficult to kind of mix together. And when it's set though, it's more flexible. So it's quite flexible, and generally for scenery, I tend to use the milliput. But for intricate pieces, green stuff can be better because there's less chance of it breaking in the mould. But what I'm going to do for the first part is take the properties of both and try and get the best out of both worlds. So mixing equal 50-50 green stuff and milliput to create what some people call grilliput, a bit of a nickname for it in the business. And hopefully that will then try and get the best of both worlds in here for these moulds. Now, when I'm filling the moulds, again, watch that video down below for the full details, but I'm putting some small parts in to start with and using a sculpting tool to kind of push it into the recesses to try and get the air bubbles out. I really focus on the pilot part of this mould here. I'm not so fussed about the co-pilots, so I do take some time here. And then once I've got those small areas filled, just take some bigger box and push them in. And that's what you've got to think of. The more intricate the mould, the more chance there is of trapping air and kind of things in there if you just go hammer and tongs in with a big block and just try and push it in with your thumb. So really try and work it down into the intricacies of the mould. And that's why I'm using this grilliput or green stuff and milliput mix, because I think it's going to give the best part of detail, but also when I try and prise it out of the mould, it's not going to snap off and fracture inside the mould. So that's what I did with these full side moulds, did that grilliput mix. But for this mould here, I'm actually using pure green stuff. This is a push mould. You can see they're literally pushing the green stuff on. It picked up that detail lovely, but it stuck to my finger. So when you're doing this type of thing, try and keep your fingers wet, and it'll stop the green stuff or milliput or the mix sticking to you. And do wear gloves if you think you might be going to react to this material. I use what's called liquid gloves. It's like a cream you rub on, and it puts like a barrier cream through it. So that's what I'm doing to keep myself safe. But using this mould here, I'm using very thin pieces of green stuff, and I'm pushing them in manually into this mould. Now, why am I using green stuff versus the other? Because this mould I've made needs ultimate flexibility for what I'm planning with the piece that's coming out of it. So the idea is to then peel this Chaos Star and be able to use it on the floor so it's flat, etc. So I didn't want to use the milliput and green stuff mix because that's not quite as flexible. So different materials for different purposes. So peeling it off now, it's had an overnight to dry. You can nearly see now, hopefully, why the green stuff was the right material for this, because it's going to peel out and I'm going to be able to then smooth it flat. I'm going to be able to spread it out. I'm going to be able to put it either flat on a scenery piece or curve it round a carapace or on a shoulder pad of a Warhound Titan, or Warlord Titan rather, or a Nemesis Warbringer, that kind of thing. So different material for different purposes. Didn't use one of those moulds. I'm going to fill that full of milliput in a minute. The other moulds where I've used the milliput and green stuff mix, you can see if I'd used pure green stuff, it would have been super flexible, it would have come out, but you almost don't need flexibility on this piece that's about to get demolded. Didn't use pure milliput because it's a difficult piece to get out and I was worried about breakage. You'll see that in a minute. So you can see here the two mixed parts for this really nice kind of, I think he's the Princeps. It's been kind of chaosified. And for purposes of a scenery piece, I can imagine him kind of growing out of a chaos wall, a bit like the Aliens films. Now, you saw me how I filled it to get rid of air gaps on the Princeps. Didn't do that on the Moderatis, the pilots. I've got a kind of a bubbly head because some air bubbles came in there, so just one to watch. I really like this piece with the Mechanicum Engineer that's in the engine bay that's been sealed into the walls, and these little castings I've taken of the kind of demonic possession taking over the inside of the vehicle. I think it'd be really nice. Hopefully you can see my vision. Most of this is going to be used for scenery pieces and castings I haven't used yet, but some of it's going to go on and be used for hopefully, a Titan conversion. So really thinking ahead in my project. I really like these little demonic faces. Now this is where actually milliput would have been ideal to use for the demonic faces and the Aquillas and things, because these are going to be flat pieces on a wall. There's no danger of snapping them as you take them out of the mould. This is what I probably wouldn't use milliput for in the future. I did because I thought, well, that'd be useful for the video and I'll see how it goes. But now I'm having difficulty getting this piece out of the mould, and you'll see that I do break some pieces off as I'm going, but I still really like the finished piece. Now I hope you like this kind of more rambly, vloggy style video. If you do, comment down below. If you don't, and you like, just go back to painting models and stop waffling, comment that down below as well. But I thought it'd be fun just to show you kind of what I do in the background between projects. Some of this may never ever see the light of day. You know, I might not use it in a future project. I think I will, because I think the Necromunda scenery piece I'm really keen on doing and just doing something different. But it's just a side of the hobby I really like. I really like casting things up. I really like making interesting things. And it may never come to fruition, but it may do as well. And I thought people out there might be interested in just seeing how my mind works whilst I'm doing a project. And sometimes that's why it can take a long time for projects to come to fruition, because I'm doing a lot of this in the background. I think my favourite piece is the Chaos symbol. You can see there I did a tiny casting with a bit of milliput there as well. That was good. But I like all the kind of castings I've taken off here. Some maybe more or less use than others. Definitely recommend doing the molds a bit thinner and thinking about it, but I didn't do too bad a job, I don't believe. So yeah, hopefully coming up fairly soon on the channel, you'll see some of these being used. Definitely going to do a Necromunda scenery piece with them. Whether they all get used or not, I don't know. And then hopefully in January on Warhammer World, I'll be able to pick up one of the bigger Titan models to definitely use some of these bits. Just an example of a bit I never got around to using. This is a cast from the Great Unclean one from forgeworld. Never got around to using it. And yeah, I've still never actually used these castings from the Reaver Titan that I've done in various sizes. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, do a like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of YouTube jazz. And bear with me. I'm sure normal videos will be coming soon. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you again. Cheers, everyone.